as well. So this is our second masterclass of the series. Today we're talking marketing. So it's called Event Marketing 101. And really what it's about is giving you a really clear appreciation of the importance of marketing for your event, but more importantly, some key elements that you need to think of to ensure that you get the outcomes that you want from your marketing activity, because we all know that regional events have tiny budgets typically for not just their marketing, to run their event full stop. So this is really about how do I actually make sure that I'm investing my marketing budget into the right place, but also how do I make sure that I'm actually achieving the outcomes, or that we're achieving the outcomes for our event from our marketing investment. So I think we're all familiar. I can't see any unfamiliar faces. So everybody is now aware of who I am, Linda Tillman, and I'm the founder of rEVENTS Academy. So this is all about trying to build the capacity of regional event organisers, particularly those volunteer committees, and supporting them to essentially make their job easier. You know, trying to get the back end of the event in order so that there's more time to actually focus on the fun, creative elements that most of us volunteer to actually do. So I won't go into the detail there. You're all familiar with who I am. If anyone at any point has any questions about me, let's not make it too personal, but if you've got any questions about my background or what we do at rEVENTS Academy, then I'm more than happy to chat to you. Now, just bear with me. I'm just keeping an eye as well on any new participants coming into the call, but looks like we might have everybody now. We're all recording. Fantastic. What I wanted to do before we start is just check in and see if there were any discussion points or questions that you may have from session one. We talked a lot about more strategic planning for your event, how to create a business plan, the importance of looking at that 3-year time frame and setting the vision and the goals and understanding the direction that you're going in for the event, so you've got that focus. So does anyone have any questions about setting up their business plan, you know, creating that rich event experience, or maybe you've got something you'd like to share in terms of what you've been able to implement based on the learnings from last week's session? Anyone is welcome to unmute themselves if you would like to jump in and ask anything before we change our conversation over to marketing. Or is everyone pretty comfortable with what we covered last week?
Linda, it's Desley.
Hi, Desley.
Yeah, sorry, wasn't sure if you can hear me. I'm on my phone today, so you'll have to excuse me if I'm a bit tech lagging.
No, it looks good. We can see you and hear you. Perfect.
Very interesting that you said about the stages of the event, and that the mature event can have its life cycle. I think myself, and I think a few of us on board would agree that some events that we've helped run in the past certainly did have a life cycle, and it's good to know that you can say call it quits. And I thought the 15% change rule was an absolutely wonderful idea for even just organisations rather than just events. Anything that you're doing in organisations, you know, the way you do things could be changed every so often to make it a little bit more invigorated. Thank you.
Thanks, Desley. Yeah, look, it's always a bit of an eye-opener when we have that conversation about the life cycle of events, because I think as volunteers in a community, when you get involved in an event, you're so passionate and you put everything into it. And I think you reach that point where you think, we're not going anywhere, you know, what's happening? And I've worked with a number of events in that situation, and sometimes you can't force it. You know, you can't force it. You can certainly look at that reinvigoration like we talked about last week, but you do have to also just be mindful of when an event has reached that point. And also when the community, and I worked with an event near Toowoomba, and it was a really good example actually, because it was a very small rural community and they had been running this very successful event for 5 years, and the event basically had outgrown the community. They'd created this monster, you know, it was so successful, but the community got really tired and they had to stop and pause for a moment and just think, okay, why did we start the event in the beginning, and revisit what that purpose was to determine whether they had achieved success. Because sometimes we get sidetracked, you know, and we can go in all different directions. And because that community had got so tired and they just said, what are we going to do? How can we try to reduce numbers? How can we try to manage this load? And then they just said, do we really have to keep doing it if we've achieved what we wanted to achieve? So like I said last week, I'm definitely not suggesting that you all go and cancel your events because that's not what we want, because events are fantastic for communities, but it is important to understand that they do have that life cycle. Anyone got anything else they'd like to share from last week, or any questions, or happy for me to dive in to this week's topic? I'm going to take silence as we're happy to go, so that you don't feel like you have to always respond to me. I'll always give a moment for comments, and if I don't hear anything, I'll just move on. Okay, so today, as I said to you at the beginning, we are structuring it slightly different in that we'll have some discussion time throughout. So I really encourage everybody to actively get involved in the conversation. So as I'm talking to you about different elements throughout our session today, I want you to always be thinking about your event. What does that mean for our event? Ask yourself, how do we currently do that for our event? And could we change, you know, and really think about how that sits with your event to understand if you've got any particular questions, because this is an opportunity to pick my brain. So please don't be scared to do that. So today, as you know, we're talking about marketing. So this is what we're going to cover. We'll be looking at profiling ideal event attendees. This is a really important conversation when we're talking about marketing, and you'll see why in a moment. We're going to look at how you can articulate your marketing objectives and KPIs. So many of you would be familiar with this term KPIs. It gets thrown around a lot, particularly if you apply for funding. You'll be asked to talk about what are your key performance indicators. Essentially, that is, what are you trying to achieve? How are you going to measure success? And we talked about that a bit last week, but this week we're looking at it more specifically from a marketing perspective. But we're going to talk about how to get cut through in a very crowded marketplace. So as I said, events typically have a very small budget that they're working with to deliver on their marketing activity. And as we know, the marketing landscape is super, super busy. It's very crowded. There's lots of activity happening. Everybody's trying to promote their event or sell an experience or sell a product or service. So it's a very crowded marketplace, and it's really important that we understand how to get cut through so that the audience that we want to hear about our event does actually hear about it, and that's where our return on investment comes in. I'm also going to share with you some tips on creating a coordinated and a phased approach to marketing your event. So just trying to get a bit of structure around your marketing activity so that it's not, you know, just firing out messages all the time. How can we be a little bit more structured in the messages that we put out or the promotion that we put out for our event at particular times? And then finally, we've got some local and free promotional opportunities to share with you. So we've got a bit to cover, but we'll have moments throughout where we can open up the conversation and discuss various points in relation to your particular event. Now, I'm really keen to know, and I'm going to just share a poll here in a moment. As you know, I like to do polls, and it gives me a sense of where everybody is at with this particular topic. So I'm really keen to understand who knows in detail. Now, that's the key. Do you know in detail who your ideal event attendee is? And also, do you have an annual marketing plan and a schedule of that marketing activity for your event? So just bear with me 1 second here. All right, so you should see that on the screen now. If you could just quickly respond to those couple of multiple choice questions. If you've got any other comments in relation to that, happy for you to take yourself off mute and share. And don't forget as well, we've got the chat box. So at any point, if you prefer to type your questions or talk via the chat rather than unmute yourself and talk to us that way, then more than happy for you to also communicate via the chat box, and I'll make sure that I check that each time we pause for a bit of discussion. Okay, we've got a couple more to go, so I'll just give it another 10 seconds and then we'll close that poll off. Anyone else want to jump in and respond? Okay. So interesting. Yes, somebody does know who their ideal event attendee is, but not in detail. And the majority of you have responded with, we welcome everyone. Now I'm going to challenge that once we get started in a moment, because I tricked you a little bit putting that one in there because I wanted to see how many people would respond to that. And this is one of the reasons events get a little lost in terms of their marketing activities, because they're not very focused and targeted. So it's okay to go, we welcome everyone, but it's also very, very important to know who's our ideal event attendee. And we'll talk about that in a moment, and I hope to be able to really explain why that's super important from a marketing perspective. Nobody has an annual marketing plan and schedule for your event. Would anybody be willing to just share with me, if you don't have an annual marketing plan or schedule, which is fine, and most events don't, how do you decide where to promote or market your event? What's that process for you? Oops, sorry, my phone's ringing. I need to turn that off.
It's Susie, with the show, we just sort of have a bit of a discussion on what we're going to market for this time of the year and how the event's going. And then we usually at this stage just do most things through Facebook and through the different Facebook groups.
And Susie, is that because it's an affordable option for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of marketing funds.
Yeah. All right, thanks for sharing that, Susie. All right, let's get stuck in. Now, this is a really important message or question. With so many options available and such a small budget, how do we know what marketing activity to undertake to get the best results? So like Susie has just said, is it about sitting down and having a conversation with the team, looking at your budget and identifying what, you know, the more affordable options are for you to promote your event to appeal to a bigger audience or a broad audience? How does that decision take place? It's a tough one, and a lot of events struggle with this. So a lot of the work that we do from a consulting perspective around, we develop marketing strategies and different things for events. And one of the key questions I get asked from a marketing perspective is, we only have, this would be a scenario, right? I'd have an event contact me and they say, oh, we've only got $2,000 to do marketing, or we've only got $500 to do marketing. We don't know where to spend it. Where should we spend that? Should we do it in our local newspaper and radio? Should we do social media? Should we do digital? So with a budget of $500 or even $2,000, that's a real challenge to be able to understand or know where you're going to get the best return. But if you know who your customers are, who your visitors are, who your attendees are, who your participants are, whatever you call them, if you know who they are in detail, then that's going to answer this question for you. So before you can choose any marketing activity, before you can answer this question and understand where to invest your $500 or $2,000, the most important thing for you to do as an event is to know intimately who your ideal event attendee is. So what is that you're saying? What is an ideal event attendee? You may have heard the term target markets. You know, it's much the same. In the event world, we call them the ideal event attendee, because it's not saying that these are the only people that can come to our event. But what it's saying is this is the ideal attendee for us. I want you to ask yourself one thing. Would you say that you're currently getting the attendees that you want through the gate at your event? Do you actually know what type of attendees you want through the gate at your event? I had an interesting discussion yesterday with some events, and there were a couple of events. They were actually race days in regional parts of Queensland, and they were saying that their event has grown so much, like beyond their capacity, essentially. And the most interesting things that they're trying to manage, so this is what they identified as their biggest challenge. The audience has changed. So they used to get a lot of grey nomads and older visitors to their race day. And in the last 3 years or so, they've all of a sudden started to get a younger crowd. And they're not sure about that because they're not really keen on the experience these younger ones are wanting. They say they cause a little bit more trouble than the grey nomads. They make more mess. So it's a very different experience that audience wants as compared to the grey nomad. So for that particular event, they actually aren't getting the attendees they want through the gate. How do you change that? Because that's almost kind of demand has created that. So it's an interesting thing. Do you think you know that you're getting the attendees you want through your gate? A lot of people would respond to this and say, oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, maybe we are. Maybe there's some that we don't really want either. You know, you might think, oh, yeah, there's a few fantastic customers or visitors and they love the experience that we offer. They're always giving positive feedback. They promote us through positive word of mouth. But then there's some customers you're probably thinking, no, I'd probably prefer they'd stay at home. They're troublemakers. They make mess. You know, they're always serial complainers. It's really hard to satisfy their needs and expectations. So it's really interesting when you start to think about it. Are you getting the attendees you want through the gate at your event? So an ideal event attendee is essentially it's the type of person you want at your event for a number of reasons. They may come to your event every year. They may be advocates and promote your event, so spreading positive word of mouth. They offer good feedback. They bring their friends. They align with the values of your event, and that's really important. Maybe they even align to the values of your community. So you need to understand the type of attendees you want through your gate. And you also need to understand that not everyone is ideal for your event. So when we say we're marketing to everyone and we welcome everyone, you need to just think about that, because not everyone is ideal for your event. You can't possibly offer an event experience that meets the needs and expectations of everyone. Now, to attract more people, more of the people you want, so your ideal event attendees, you have to intimately understand their traits, dispositions, you know, the geographic location of where they're coming from. So that's where you need to really get to understand them, because then from a marketing perspective, you can go, okay, my little $500 or $2,000 budget is going to be focused on those attendees. That's what it's about. It's not saying, okay, this is an exclusive event for that type of person only. Although you could do that, there'd be no reason why you couldn't, but that's not what this is about. It's not saying this is only for that type of person. What it's saying is that's the type of person that's ideal for our event. So we're going to invest our marketing budget towards that type of person, because we know we can offer the experience. We know they're going to have a good time. We know they promote the event for us. We know they clean up their mess and, you know, are really respectful types of visitors. So they're the things that you need to, I guess, determine around your ideal attendees. So does that make sense? Are you currently getting the attendees you want through the gate? It's an interesting question to pose to yourself. So how do we get to know our ideal event attendees? This is where you need to do a bit of profiling. And you probably already know a lot about them, and probably more than you actually think. But what you need to do is sit down and actually do some profiling. So it's a bit of a brainstorming session, similar to, you know, last week we were talking about, you know, identifying your values and themes and that type of thing. And I suggested you get little groups of people together to brainstorm that kind of stuff. Well, this is the same thing. Sit down and really start to think, okay, who are our ideal attendees? And you want to start looking at things like, what are their lifestyles and what are they interested in? How do they purchase event tickets? Where do they live? How often do they travel? Is there a certain time of the year that they travel? You know, grey nomads are a good one. We all know that they're kind of on a bit of a circuit. So you need to understand that if that's your market. You also need to understand, you know, what's important to them in life. What experiences are they actually seeking out? You know, are they looking to educate themselves? Are they looking to connect with their families? Or maybe they want to immerse themselves in a new culture. So it sounds a bit creepy, but but you've got to kind of really get to know this type of person, because that creates your ideal event attendee profile. So a few practical ways that you can gather some of this information to get to understand your ideal attendees. As I said, do some brainstorming with your team. So really sit down and have that discussion around, who do we really want through our gate? And just start noting, just scribble down ideas, and we're going to do a little bit of that in a moment. You can also talk to your visitors face to face. So this is where, you know, doing that post-event review, talking to visitors at your event, doing your surveying, trying to find out as much information about them as possible. You can always send out surveys to previous attendees. And don't be afraid to do that. Sometimes events like, oh, I don't want to overwhelm people, you know, asking them too much. It actually shows that you're trying to improve your event to suit their needs. So if they are your ideal event attendee, then they will really take the time to put into providing quality feedback for your event. Another really cool way is to listen to chatter on social media. And also not just about your event, but themes related to your event. So if it is a horse racing event, what are people talking about at other horse racing events? What do they like? What don't they like? What frustrates them? So you can actually jump on social media and just do some stalking in a very nice way. You can research with Google. So we have access to so much data and analytics these days that we're able to do some research into the kinds of people that are also coming to our Facebook pages or coming to our website. So if you do have Google Analytics set up, you're able to look in the back end and determine who's actually coming to your site. So also using some of those digital platforms, if you have them, can give you some insights into who is interested in your event, where they're from, etc. There's also research out there as well. So you can also look at Tourism Research Australia. There's, you know, your regional tourism organisation, so Outback Queensland Tourism will have some data to give you some insights into different types of visitors coming into the region. So once you start to gather all of this, you start to paint this picture of your ideal event attendee. And some people even create personas. You may have heard that term before. So creating this persona, and they give them a name and they put a little image, you know, so they might go, this is, you know, Joyful Julie, for example, you know, and they'll have a little photo that's representative of her age and stuff like that. And then they start to talk about Joyful Julie. You know, she loves a good time, always looking to hang out with her friends. You know, she's from Brisbane and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So you start to create a real life profile of who your attendee is. It really helps when you start looking at your marketing activity, because what you then do is you start to go, okay, where is Joyful Julie searching online? What media does she consume? When does she buy tickets? Or how does she buy tickets? Does she like to go into visitor information centres or ticketing booths, or does she pre-book a lot of her stuff online? So it's really starting to get some insight into the habits of your ideal event attendee. All right, I want to hand over to you guys. So based on what I've just talked about, tell me what you think. What do you know who your ideal event attendee is, or who you want to come through the gate at your event?
With the show, we want more competitors.
And do you know what types of competitors and where they're from and the detail around that? Have you ever profiled them?
No, not really. Like, we just think if we can build up our competitors for, say, the ring events or the sheep studs that are there, that brings in more people through the gate.
Yeah, so it has that flow-on effect, doesn't it? More competitors equals, well, that equals more entertainment, right? So your competitors are somewhat your entertainment.
Entertainment, yeah.
Yeah, so then therefore you've got more in your program and can attract more people. And they also have friends and family, right, that they're bringing.
They turn up with them all the time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so have you ever, it'd be interesting to just really start to look at the detail around that and go, okay, you would obviously break it down. If I was you looking at different competitors for a show, I would start breaking that down based on the types of events. So, you know, whether it's equine or sheepdogs or whatever else is at the show, you know, start to break it down and go, because they've got, you know, they're very much focused on a particular interest.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Facebook, what would be a really good opportunity would be to look at different Facebook groups and different Facebook pages that have similar interests. So if it's the equine events in the arena, then you're obviously going to start looking at those different disciplines on social media and seeing where you can possibly do some targeted promotion. So this is all about going, who are they, so that we can target our marketing activity to them. What I want you to try to get away from is the broad messaging of events. There's certainly a place to do some of that, but when you've got such a small budget,
yep,
you have to be really targeted. So how can we target particular, you know, event types or demographics for our event to try to build that reputation? And then if you deliver a good experience and they are the right type of person coming through your gate, then they'll start doing the marketing for you. And
yep,
that's when gold happens, because you start to create what we call loyal advocates, you know, so they love what you do. They know that you always look after them. You know, they know you deliver a good experience. It's a total fit for what they're wanting and needing out of an experience. So they just go and rave about it. You know, everyone talks on social media, spread the word, bring their friends or invite their friends. That's where you want to try to get to, but you've got to be able to know who those people are to begin with. And it's not about having one as well. Sorry, I should have made that clear too. It's you might find that, you know, when we talk about ideal event attendees, you might create 2 or 3 or 5 different profiles. You know, I wouldn't try to get too many, but you might create a few different profiles of the type of attendees that are the best fit for your event. How's everyone else feel about that? Does it make sense? Is it a process that you can see would help in terms of understanding how to promote your event?
yes.
Yeah. And it's, once again, it's one of those things, you know, that a lot of events don't take the time to just sit down and think through who are our ideal attendees. But if you can do it and you can really understand, and everybody on your committee understands, it also starts to help you create the experience and add new elements. You know, Desley, the 15% rule that we talked about last week. If you know who your ideal attendees are and what they love and what their interests are, then you can start to also integrate that into the event experience as well. Because it's one thing to do promotion and promote your event to ideal attendees, but you then have to be able to deliver the experience. If we don't deliver the experience, it's a waste of time and money doing the marketing and promotional activity. Desley, you've just said in the chat box, just do it on the run. Is that in response to knowing who your attendees are? So it's just, you feel like you know them, it's just happens on the run? Is that what you mean by that?
Yes, that's correct, Linda. When you asked how do you set about working out your target audience, in the past I've just experienced that it's just done, you know, at a meeting or whatever, but there's nothing scientific about it. It's just what you think.
Who is your ideal attendee, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh,
you
well,
tell me to
yeah,
go away
well,
if you want to.
Currently for the committee I'm involved in, it would be a group, probably young to not so young adults that would enjoy a fine dining experience as well as some good entertainment, music, and let's say, a delicate way of putting it, have the ability to help in the fundraising efforts. In other words, be happy to, you know, buy something at an auction or contribute in, you know, in one way or another. Not necessarily buy something at an auction, but to know that the people that are coming along are wanting an experience as well as wanting to fundraise for our FDS.
And that's important, you know, that's really important to know that. you know, sometimes you feel a bit awkward, don't you? Because you're like, oh, I don't really want to say that that's the type of person we're looking for. But if that's the purpose of the event, if your event is a fundraising event, then that is a critical component in terms of who your attendees are. So if you've got a room full of people that, you know, for whatever reason, possibly financially, are not going to be, you know, big purchases, then your event's not going to achieve the desired outcomes. So it's okay to note that.
You've got to be upfront, I think, about that in your planning. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, and the setting the price of the tickets as well.
Absolutely. Anyone got any other thoughts on ideal event attendees before I move on, or anything they'd like to share? Do you absolutely know who your ideal event attendees are? Jane, you're nodding your head. Who are your ideal event attendees?
Sorry, just unmute myself, and sorry for being late, everyone. But we're having a welcome party, a Barefoot Bowls welcome party on the 27th of February. And it's part of our multicultural welcoming and kind of attraction efforts for council. So we have two target audiences, one of them being new residents, and within that there are some subgroups. So we've sort of got teachers, sort of new medical staff, nurses, doctors, police officers, those sort of professional people that are new to the district because they've had to move here for work. Then there's our sort of multicultural residents. Most of them are here for work purposes as well, but they're perhaps, or some of them bought businesses, so they're a slightly different group. And they're a little bit more difficult to target because they're not just attached to an organisation. You know, we can't just send a notice to, we can send a notice to the school inviting teachers to come, whereas we can't necessarily with the others. And then also we want local residents to come along as well, because we want it to be an opportunity for these new people to actually meet members of the community that are more established here, so that they can make those connections. It's kind of about manufacturing an opportunity for people to meet one another. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'll also note via Kim, I've also provided a worksheet. So that worksheet is a bit of a guide that will assist you to think through the process of identifying your ideal event attendee. So it asks lots of questions, and some of it you may be able to answer. Some you may think, oh, look, we just don't know that about them. And that's absolutely fine. But I encourage you to have a look at that. So if you've got the opportunity to sit down with a couple of other people that are involved with your event and just talk through those points, it'll help you start to get that picture of your ideal event attendee, which is going to give you the information that you need to better target and focus your marketing activity and to get better outcomes from your marketing budget. So once we've got all of this information about our ideal attendees, so we know who they are, we've got that intimate knowledge of them, what do we actually do with that information? How do we use that information? Like I've been saying, it's an opportunity to focus your marketing activity. So what we want to do is we want to use that information. We want to use the knowledge that we have of our ideal attendees to cut through this busyness of marketing. Because what happens if you don't really know who your ideal event attendee is, then you could actually be spending money and also time targeting people that aren't even really interested in your event, or they're the ones that you would rather stay at home. So you have to really understand who they are in order to optimize the outcomes from your marketing spend. So if you've got $500, you want to get the maximum return for where you spend that $500, whether it's on social media or with the local newspaper or radio or whatever it may be. You need to know where to spend that $500 so the right people get the right message and come to your event. But also, once you know who your ideal attendees are, this is when you can start to look at things like the program. So does your event program match the needs and wants of your ideal attendees? So you think about, like I said before, when I gave that example of the race meeting that's actually now starting to attract a younger audience over what they were traditionally used to, which was the grey nomad, and they're not really sure how to deal with this. That's because it's a complete different experience that each of them are wanting. The races are obviously the non-negotiable, if you like. But in terms of the other activity that happens around the horse racing, grey nomads versus a younger, uni students or, young couples, they're a very different experience, and therefore they impact the program that you develop. You also need to consider things like the date of your event. Is it suitable for your ideal attendees? If it's for uni students, then is it in the holidays or is it over a long weekend? If it's grey nomads, for example, then you need to consider that migration of grey nomads to know that it's going to fit into their schedule when they're coming in your particular area. So you need to think about the date, also the price structure. So does the price structure suit the market? Like you were just saying, Desley, knowing that that's the type of audience you're looking for, then you set the price of your tickets accordingly. So, uni students living on a very low wage, if anything, can't necessarily afford, high premium price tickets versus, a professional couple, perhaps from metro or even from regional area. The price structure will be different depending on the market and the experience that you're offering. It'll also allow you to determine if you need payment plans, if you need to have payment plan options in place and what types of payment methods you need. Most importantly, it allows you to understand the marketing channels that's going to reach them. So are they on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or are they on all of them? The saying at the moment is, that our parents, I'm putting myself in the young category here, the parents of the younger ones are now on Facebook, and even the grandparents are on Facebook, and all the young ones migrated to Instagram, and now they're even moving to TikTok. So even social media is really interesting to watch in terms of the types of people that are using the different platforms. Once you know who your ideal attendee is, you can look at what other media they often refer to. It'll also let you determine what key marketing messages will resonate with those audiences, because you need to capture them, right? So when there's so much marketing activity, just picture yourself right now and how many marketing messages you've been exposed to even in the last 24 hours. Think about scrolling over Facebook. Think about looking online on a website, how many ads have popped up on there. Think about the radio that you may have listened to on the way to work. Think about, TV last night. There's always so much noise from a marketing and sales perspective. Everybody's trying to sell us something. So you need to make sure your messaging is absolutely spot on for your audience so that they hear it. And you also need to think about, once you know your ideal attendees, is how do I convert them into loyal advocates? What's really important to them? What are their values? How can I deliver the best experience ever for that type of attendee so they go away and rave about the event? So you can see how it's totally about marketing and being more focused and targeted in your activity. But what it does is it allows you to create an event that is relevant to your market. And these are all things that you know. All I'm saying is once you've got your ideal attendee, you need to line it all up. Next time you're having a conversation with the committee about the date of your event or the price that you're going to charge for, you know, a new ticketed component of your event, I want you to be the one that says, hang on guys, this is not about what price we think it should be. What's an appropriate price for our ideal attendees? And you should always put yourself in their shoes. Whenever you're making those decisions about your event, put yourself in your attendees' shoes. So now that you know who your ideal attendee is, I'm going to say that you do know. And I'm sure right now you're kind of going, oh my God, yeah, they are. Okay, it's that kind of person. As I'm talking to you, please jot things down. If you think of, you know, things relevant to your event, or if this is getting your mind ticking, start writing it down. So now that you know who they are, you can be much more focused in your marketing activity. The next step for you from a marketing perspective is to set yourself some goals and targets. So remember last week we talked about setting your business plan, and we talked about in that, you know, having goals and a mission and a vision and all of those strategic things, the objectives of your event. You need to refer back to those because obviously that will provide some alignment for your marketing objectives. But then you need to think about, from a marketing perspective, really what is it that we're trying to achieve? Is your event about providing attendees with a range of top quality entertainment options? It might just be about increasing outer region and international visitors, or even just, you know, intrastate visitors. Your event might be more about building civic pride or engaging local residents. So it's a more localized event. It's about community and civic pride. It could be building community capacity by increasing economic activity and stakeholder engagement. Your main objective might be about ensuring financial viability, growth, and even sustainability of the festival. If it's a tourism event, often your overarching goal will consist of something along the lines of building the brand awareness of your town or your region. Or the core purpose could be growing profit or raising funds for a charity. Or it could be something other than that. It's really important to know what you want to achieve from your event. And we talked about that a lot last week when we talked about business planning, your purpose, understanding your why. What is that core reason for your event's existence? Because any marketing activity that you do needs to always relate back to that. Once you know what that overarching purpose is, what you're trying to achieve, then you can start to narrow it down a little bit further and start to look at, well, what do we want to achieve from our marketing? And the reason we like to do this is because we like to measure results. So we like to have some targets. And particularly if you've got funding, even if it's local council funding or you've got funding from state government or another funding program, they'll want you to set, you know, remember what I talked about, the key performance indicators, the KPIs? They'll want you to set some of those because it's important that if you're investing your 500 or your 2,000, or maybe you get funding and you've got 20,000, imagine that. You want to know what results you've got from that. So you want to know specifically in terms of the activity you've done, what has worked. because what that does, it allows you to adjust your activity for the following year. We're always learning, right? We're always learning what's worked. If my $500 was most effective through, you know, the Facebook advertising or the local radio PR campaign that I did, then you're going to invest more in that next year, right? And if it didn't work, then you've got to reassess and start to look at where to invest that money. This is all about getting the best return. So some of the things that may make up your objectives or KPIs are things like how many attendees attend your event and the ticket sales. It could be around building your social media audience and following. So you might have a goal or KPI around, you know, increasing the number of followers you have on social media. It could be about attracting subscribers. So a lot of events and businesses do a lot of work around building a database. So some of your marketing might be really about driving, you know, subscriptions to that database, so then you can continue to promote to them on an ongoing basis. You might have some objectives around increasing the spend and stay in the region, or your website visits. How many people have been to your website over a period of time? So you might go, okay, we were doing our heaviest marketing during this 2 or 3 month period. Now we want to line that up with how many people came to our website at that time. And that's going to help you determine the success of some of that activity. You might package up your event tickets. So you might have event tickets packaged up with some accommodation or meals or a tour or travel coach. And you might measure your objectives based on how many bookings you have for that package. Or media coverage. A lot of events also have KPIs around media coverage. So if they're doing a lot of public relations work, what they'll do is they will set a bit of a target to say, well, we want to attract, you know, $100,000 equivalent value in media exposure for our event. So when you're setting your marketing plan, you need to have some KPIs or targets. Then at the end of your event, you can assess how effective they've been. You might even have a KPI around volunteer appeal. So some events will say through their marketing activity, they're building some appeal amongst a potential or new volunteer base. So you need to set these KPIs. You can't achieve results unless you know what your KPIs are, because you can't measure nothing. All right. I'm really interested to get some feedback. So how do you measure success and return on investment for your marketing? What's important to you in terms of measuring that? And what about that whole thing around using the information to cut through the white noise? Anyone got any comments or thoughts on that around how knowing your ideal event attendee actually, you know, impacts the date of your event, the price structure of your event? The type of program or experience that you offer for your event? Has anyone had to go through this process and really start to look at putting themselves in their attendees' shoes to get an appreciation of meeting their needs and expectations?
Probably when we bought, it's Susie, when we bought in the motorbike gymkhana for our last show, it was something the community had actually asked for and been told no, they couldn't have for a few years. And I listened to what they were saying and I said, yes, we can have it. And the feedback and the success of that event was unreal. Like, and everyone said, why hasn't this happened earlier? And I went, well, you've got to have a committee that wants to run it. So and we put that on the line as like probably that 15% for that show, because we did put a lot of prize money into it and got sponsorship and that, and it was successful. And parents all said that it was, the kids' nomination fee was $20 for the day. They spent all day racing motorbikes, got their prize money, then went to Sideshow Alley, and they said it was the best money they'd ever spent at a show. So to us, we measured that as very successful.
And did you introduced that because there was demand. So that's obviously a market of yours, yeah? So that younger market was looking for something more in your event.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying about the program, right? It's and so much power in just listening to your audience. You know, and I know often it's overwhelming because we get a lot of different suggestions and ideas thrown at us as event organisers. Oh, why don't you do this? You should try this. You need to critically analyse all of those suggestions and ideas. But when those little nuggets come up, you know, those things that are going to align really well to a market that you're trying to grow or to your ideal attendees, then that's when you start to go, okay, is this going to build on the experience and give us a better return for our investment?
Yes, I think, and we were really successful with that because there was that need for it at that stage. I think this year it will be bigger again. And we do promote that through a regional Facebook or Australia-wide motorbike Facebook page, Motorbike Gymkhana page. And then we have our people that we strategically target that's in other motorbike groups, and they post it to their Facebook page, so it goes out that way.
Perfect. Yeah. And that's a classic example of knowing that's a specific market, right? That's, you know, they've got specific interests. They're going to come specifically for that, but then they're going to do other things as well. So Sideshow Alley benefits at the end of the day. But by knowing that specific market and being able to target your marketing activity by promoting the experience that's relevant to them,
yes,
you're generating that interest without having to try too hard.
Yeah.
And then it's about going, okay, how do we now? So if you think about, if we just take that one step further and you think about the, you know, the motorbike fans or, you know, motocross advocates, it's how do you now get them to promote the event for you? And it probably is already happening, to be honest. Like if you had such a good response from the event last time, it's probably already happening for you.
Yeah, well, I attended one in Cunnamulla in November, and most of them there said, are you holding it at the show this year? Is the show going ahead? And I said, yes. They said, oh, we'll be there then. Like, it's that word of mouth. The year before, I printed up flyers and took to a couple of other events and handed them out with the program, with everything on it. And that was, yeah, it's just probably a different couple of marketing options, but that's what we used.
Yep. Anyone else got any comments or want to share anything about how you break through that white noise? Or do you find that most of the time your marketing message is usually pretty effective? Hey, Sheila.
Hi, I'm like Susie. I tend to, and we talked about that sort of micro festival thing. So I tend to tailor it around what they need. There's a lot of word of mouth. You're absolutely right, Susie, and that's your best advertisement you can get is that word of mouth. So and meeting that need. So and I think using the survey monkeys to do a survey, using my Facebook page to see what people want. But the best feedback I get is at the time. Is because they're in that space, they're in that mode, and I get some really good ideas about what they want. And the other thing is, one of the things I suppose I find difficult is you have that initial interest, is how you convert that to an actual booking or to another event. So there's lots of people get in contact with you, and it's like, oh, this is great to have somebody locally that can be able to do this. But then how do you actually convert that into them booking an event with you? So and that's one of the things that I find a little bit difficult, is getting that conversion to actually booking your time and exactly what do people want. Because sometimes people, they don't know necessarily what they want. And if you've got one sort of product that they can identify with, so it could be that you make brie cheese, and then people can say, all right, brie cheese, well, we'll get Sheila in because she does brie cheese. But, you know, if you do, you know, several other different things and I can tailor it to what you require, then people go, oh, I don't know what I want. So being flexible is great on one hand, in the fact that you can tailor to what their needs are. But I think sometimes what I'm finding is when you're trying to have an event booked through a third party, is they don't know what the needs of the audience are, and they know you exist, but they're just not quite sure how to turn that into something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. So have you, I'm sure you have, you know, looked at what point are they stopping? You know, like you say, you're not getting that conversion.
So if I hear or somebody mentions somebody to somebody, and it comes around to me that they might be interested in, so it might be an organization that are interested in what you might have to offer. But so then they'll have a conversation with me, and I can talk to them about, well, I could do this for you, or I could do that for you. I'm happy to do this. We can look at that sort of thing. And then it's almost like I've given them too much to think about. And so then now they don't know what they want you for. And now they're not too sure what their audience is and what does the audience need. So when they're so that's a lot of the time I'll just organize my own events and I just liaise directly with the audience. But when there's a third party, it's, this is what I can offer, or that's great, that's awesome, oh man, I didn't realize that you could offer so much, and then no follow-up, nothing after that. It's almost like, oh, it's too hard basket, we'll just get somebody in who can make cheese, eh?
And it's knowing the audience, and they're wanting you to tell them what they need or want. It's like you have to, put yourself in their shoes and go, okay, what's going to resonate with them?
Yeah, often with a third party, what I'm finding is that it's a general thing that's going out there. So it might be something around health and wellness. Well, you know, there are 10 different workshops I could do for you on health and wellness. What do you want? And they're like, well, don't know. We just got some funding to do workshops on health and wellness. So it's like, well, do you want something that's progressive? Do you want just one-offs? Yeah. And the other thing is sometimes is, you wanting to make the cheese, but like making cheese is really complex. And if you're trying to do something around health and wellness, you need to start at the beginning, not halfway through. So that's my challenge. If I'm doing it myself, then I'll target it around certain specific things, but through a third party, I don't know how to convert that. I'm struggling there.
What type of third parties do you deal with, Sheila? Are you talking like corporate?
So normally government
Council?
agencies, yes. Government agencies that have been given
I'm
some
really
funding,
sorry, Sheila.
that have been given
Feel like
some
this might
funding.
be targeted at me.
No, it's not just you. It's this. You're not the only person that is really interested in what I'm doing, and there's from, you know, I'm happy to travel 200 or 300 kilometers. So there's more than just local. But what it is when we're looking at what we're trying to do, and in your information that you've sent through, which is around what's your ideal, who are your attendees, and I suppose maybe, Jane, what we need to be looking at is who are you targeting? What are your KPIs around? Who are you targeting? What do you have to meet for that funding to be able to say, well, you've had these events, and then.
And probably something to keep in mind with that is that, and this is, I guess, comes down to understanding your target audience or who you're dealing with. If it's me as a third, counsel, for example, as a client or as someone who's trying to work with you to organise things, is we have to consult with the community. So we have to go to the community and we have to say, what do you want? And when the community says to us, well, we don't know what we want, then I'm in the same position that you are, where I'm trying to follow up, I'm trying to get people to give me answers, and they can't give me answers either. So it's, yeah, a lot of
one of the things,
intricacies to it, let's say.
Yeah, so one of the things is then, I suppose what I'd look at from my Queensland Health point of view is like, so when the person who's given you the bucket of money to go away and do your healthy communities or your health and well-being, what is their expectation? And then we can then put that out to the wider audience, and then people can either attend or not attend. So I suppose rather than, because what I've found is it's very, and this is why I offer so many different workshops, is because what people want is so varied. And the first thing that springs to the head is always cheese making. And it's like, well, there's a way to start before cheese making, because I've attended cheese making workshops and then nobody ever makes cheese. So it doesn't actually meet if the criteria is around healthy communities and about health and wellness. It's taking the audience then on a journey. So that's where we talked about whether you provide a program and people sign up for a program. So, but it's not just you, mate. It's other organisations, like your Country Women's Association. It's your different, like your different ladies groups, and they want different things. And but converting it to actual events is quite difficult, because they're not sure what they want. They just want something. We want to change.
You almost need to help them determine those elements. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Now, I'm going to stay pretty high level with this. I don't want to get too technical. But what I want to do now, so we've essentially talked about, identifying who your ideal attendees are and setting those KPIs or marketing objectives, right? So we're now in a position to go, okay, we know who our audience is, we know what we're trying to achieve. So how do we actually do it? What are the marketing actions or tactics that we're going to use to actually reach our audience and to achieve the KPIs that we've set? Now, you may be familiar with this. They call it the 4 Ps of marketing. I think actually it's now 6 Ps or something. It's they've added a few more in, but I'm a bit of a traditionalist, so I'm sticking with the 4 Ps. I just wanted to touch on this. So I'm not going to get technical, as I said, but I wanted to touch on it because the important message here is that marketing is about more than advertising and promotion. And a lot of people forget that. So when we're thinking about marketing, when we're thinking about our ideal attendees and the experience that we're offering, we need to factor in these 4 key elements: product, price, place, promotion. So we've got to be thinking about our ideal event attendee in regards to each of those elements of marketing. So when we're talking about product, that's where we're thinking about our event program. We're talking about the experience. What's the event experience that we're offering? Like I said a little earlier, you can promote or advertise the heck out of your event. But, and this is kind of what you were just saying, Sheila, if the experience is not right, it's not what they're looking for, even if they don't know what they're looking for, then all of that promotion and advertising you invest time and money in is going to be a waste of time and money. So product is all about knowing the experience that your attendees are looking for. And then we look at price. Is your event priced at the right price point? What about the payment options and discounts? Do you need to offer a seniors discount to appeal to your target market, or a student discount? Is that important to them? Place is all about your distribution channels. So this is about where are your customers going to search for your event or to purchase tickets. And like the example I used before, are they going on social media or digital channels to buy their tickets online? Or do they like to go into a physical ticket booth or visitor information centre, for example? So you need to understand what those distribution channels are for your ideal attendees, because that's going to give you a better return and also a better appreciation of what that conversion point is within your marketing and promotion. And then lastly, we have promotion. And this is the advertising you undertake. The PR, the advertising, those things that you invest in to reach your audience. So you need to think about all those things. Often people, when they go marketing, they just think about advertising and promotion. We need to do social media. We'll, contact the newspaper and get a listing in the local paper. We'll, all of those traditional type things that we classify as advertising and promotion. But there's all of these other elements, and I've talked about them as well when we talked about, the white noise. You need to think of all these things when you're talking about or thinking about your marketing activity for your event. Now, I want to touch on this idea of a coordinated, phased approach to your marketing of your event. Having a schedule that outlines this makes it much clearer. I know everybody said at the beginning they don't have a marketing plan or a marketing schedule that they use, but it's really important, and I've given you a copy, also another document to use that will assist you to create a marketing schedule. Most events that I deal with, or all events actually that I've ever dealt with, only focus their marketing in the pre-event stage, so that final 2 to 3 months. And there's obvious reasons for that. Everyone's busy getting the event ready. It's like marketing doesn't really become important to most people until about 2 or 3 months before their event. And then it's like, okay, now we need to make sure people know about the event and people come and buy tickets. But what I want you to start thinking about is these 3 stages to your marketing. Once again, you've got to put yourself into the head of your attendees. And especially when we're in regional areas, if we're wanting to attract people from outside of our region or even interstate or even international, who knows, then the lead time is much longer. People make their decisions much longer. People need to consider booking travel and doing things like that. So if we leave our promotion into the last 2 to 3 months, and once again, this all depends on who our target audience is. But if we leave our promotion and marketing to the last 2 to 3 months, then we're cutting down the potential audience that we will attract to our event. So this is it. This is a typical phased approach for a festival or event. And you need to adapt this based on your event. If it's a very localized event just for local residents, then obviously you don't need to do anything as extensive as 10 months worth of promotion. But the stages are still really important. So we talk about this awareness, consideration, and conversion stages. And I've just given here some suggested kind of timeframes, right? So what we do is, first of all, we look at awareness. So we've got to build that really targeted awareness of our event. People need to know about it before they can even consider coming. They also need to know if they're from interstate or even intrastate. They need to be familiar with the destination as well. So you're building this awareness, you know, of your region, of the event, what it's all about. You're telling your story. And this all happens about 10 to 6 months out from your event. So this is where things like organic social media, so not putting any money, but just, you know, your organic social media posts, lots of content on your website, doing blog articles, doing direct marketing. So, you know, like you were saying, Susie, knowing those motorbike clubs and groups and really directing some marketing to them to say, hey guys, we've got this coming up in 6 months' time. Make sure you let all your clubs know about it. So really doing some direct marketing and creating content. So like I said, writing blog articles, you know, sharing that with different people that are associated with groups, you know, whether it's health and well-being, you know, really starting to build profile and awareness. So that's that period of say 10 to 6 months. Then we move into this consideration phase. Now people know your event's happening. Word's out, oh yeah, there's this event happening in St. George. It's really cool. And then they start to see it again and they're like, yeah, I wouldn't mind going there. We've always wanted to go to St. George and that event's on. Maybe we should go. So they're already aware of your event and they're somewhat engaged. Now you want them to seriously consider it. This is where they start to go, how could that work? Let's have a look at, you know, travel. Let's look at accommodation. Let's look if we can get some holidays at that time. So in this phase, you want to be doing digital advertising. So you start to put some dollars behind your digital and your social media activity. Keep up that direct marketing because direct marketing to your ideal attendees is absolute gold. And people start to do in this stage influencer campaigns. So you may have heard this term influencers. So they're people that are typically quite influential in their own industry or their own audience on social media channels. So you can work with these influencers that have alignment with your audience and they can actually do some promotion to that audience for you. So you're wanting them to consider, and there's a bit of FOMO kind of that goes with that fear of missing out. You know, if somebody else is promoting it, they're like, oh, what are they doing? So you're really creating consideration. At this stage, you're wanting people to go, yeah, okay, I'm going to start doing some research. This looks cool. They start talking to, you know, family and friends. Hey, would you want to go to this event? And then we move into conversion. So this is your selling your tickets. This is your last chance messaging. This is where it's really serious. And I know for some events that 3 months might be a bit of overkill, but for other events, even longer than 3 months will be necessary in this conversion stage. So don't leave it to the last minute to get those tickets on sale. And this is where you want to continue that digital advertising, social advertising, your direct marketing and PR, your direct marketing. And this is when PR and media activations come in. So working with the local paper or, you know, engaging with ABC radio or other local media outlets to try to get some free publicity for your event. And this would also be traditionally when you would start to bring in any traditional advertising channels. So if you do have budget to do things like TV or billboards or radio or any of that more traditional promotional activity, most people leave it to the last 3 months. And the reason for that is that's when you want to convert, but also it's so expensive. It's so expensive to do it over those 3 phases. You just won't get any cut through with a small budget. Even in just that 3-month period, you know, you're going to need a few thousand to make any kind of impact with traditional advertising, which is why social media and digital is such a good option for a lot of events these days. So that's this concept of having this coordinated, phased approach to your marketing. We've got to get away from that just firing out messages all the time and going, oh my God, we haven't promoted the event. Let's just go bam, bam, bam on, you know, Facebook for a month and overwhelm people. But we haven't really taken that time to consider this coordinated approach, which gently kind of builds awareness, then gets that consideration happening, and then now buy tickets. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit there. Now, let me just talk about budget, because you probably look at that and go, oh my God, how can we afford to do all of that stuff? You probably can't, and that's why you need to be really targeted. Just to give you an idea, festivals that attract, so this is based on events that I work with. So I work a lot with tourism events, but in the work that I do, there's also community events as well that participate. But give you an example just to give it a little bit of context. So say a regional event, tourism event that attracts about, say, 8,000 to 10,000 people to their event. They are usually working on a marketing budget of around $15,000 to $20,000 per year. Even that is classed as a fairly small budget. And I know that you guys are probably nowhere near that, and that's totally fine. But it's important to understand kind of where events are sitting. And this is why it's so important to actually get really clear and focused on your marketing activity. Smaller events are usually on average about, 10% of their budget would go to marketing. And nearly every regional event that I work with has a very, very limited budget. And they do rely heavily on government grants to help them with their marketing activity. So I didn't want to tell you that to kind of blow your head out of the water. But it's important to understand where you're sitting or what you should strive for. And there is quite a bit of funding to assist with event marketing that's available. All right, as we said, or as I said at the start of this masterclass, one of the most common marketing questions I'm asked from events is where to invest their small budget to get the best return. So I've only got my $500 or my $2,000. Where should I put that to get the best return? Because damn, there's lots of options. And lots of event committees are really struggling to know where to put their budget to get that return. And that's why they go often to social media. It's just, in most instances, free. But a lot of events, and this is a whole other conversation, but a lot of events don't also understand how hard it is to get cut through on social media. So this is just a little overview of some of the channels that you have available for consideration when you look at promotion of your event or advertising of your event. There's things like content creation. So this is more about, creating good photos and videos and blog articles about your event. And when you talk to a lot of marketing experts, they will say, nothing sells better than good quality photos and videos. So it is important to consider, particularly if you can tap into some funding, can you actually get someone to capture some fresh photos and videos of your event? You've also got to consider website management. So developing a website, continuing to refresh that website. There's things like search engine optimization and Google Analytics, which is a bit technical from a digital perspective, but really important if you want to be promoting your event online. Then we go into things like social media advertising. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can have your own pages or channels, and then you can actually pay others to promote your event on theirs. Digital advertising, so this is doing a whole range of things on digital platforms, so different websites, so Google advertising. You can do display advertising on websites. You can do media campaigns online. There's a whole range of things that you can do from a digital perspective. And one thing I often recommend to events, so if there's a group of events in a local area that could tap into some funding to hire an expert, because social media advertising and digital advertising is changing like that. It's just an ever evolving beast. So to actually get good results from it, you have to be working in it constantly. And there's lots of different agencies out there that just specialize in digital advertising and social media advertising. It's a good investment if you can actually get some funding. And that's why I suggest to many regions, you know, to pool a few events together and see if you can do some collaboration to get some really good digital marketing happening for a series of events. There's also things like PR and media. You've got traditional advertising, which is your TV and radio or your newspaper, etc. And then we've got direct marketing or sales. So that's electronic newsletter campaigns, so using things like MailChimp. It could be mailbox drops, cold calling people, making sure they know about your event. So you can see there's so many options, and when you've got such a little budget, it's really overwhelming to know where to spend your money. So what you've got to remember to consider is, where is your ideal event attendee? So where are they going to see your promotion? And that's the key to gaining the maximum return on that investment. You also need to gather feedback at every opportunity you have to identify how people are hearing about your event. And that's also going to allow you to take note of what advertising is working and what isn't. You don't want to guess those things because you can't afford to. When you've got a little budget, you want to really understand what advertising spend is giving you the best return. Now, these are just a few local and free promotional opportunities for you to consider. So this has been shared by council, and you may have more. If there's more free local promotional opportunities or any free promotional opportunities that you're aware of for events, can I please encourage you to put it in the chat box so that everybody can see that, or feel free to share it in our next open discussion, which will be in about 1 minute. There's things like online calendars, so Connect Southwest and My Community. If you are a larger tourism event, you want to consider the ATDW, which is what they call the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse. And that is a free listing. So events in Queensland don't have to pay to be listed on that. And that means your event gets listed on like hundreds of websites. It's a really cool way to promote your event. It goes on the This is Queensland events calendar, but then it also gets distributed out to a wide range of other relevant websites to promote your event. So if you don't know a lot about that and you think that that's suitable for your event, I encourage you to chat to Kim at council and she'll be able to help you through that journey. Facebook's another good free option. So create an event. So it's not just creating your page or doing a post, but create an event on your page, because then people can RSVP and they can share that. Local radio, you've got Southwest newspaper, and also things like dropping flyers and posters to visitor information centres is a good free way to promote your event as well. Not always free because you've got to usually cover design and printing, but still a good distribution channel. All right, how's everyone feeling? There's a lot of information and I actually still have a bit to go. I'm nearly there, but let's open it up for a chat again. Anybody have any thoughts on marketing channels? Do you know what marketing channels are giving you the best return? Do you have any questions about those marketing channels I've talked about?
It's Desley, Kim. Linda.
Hey, Desley.
Why did I call you Kim? Can you explain about MailChimp versus just ordinary emails out? Like an emailing, why do you need MailChimp? And what is it?
Yeah, okay. So MailChimp is one of many email marketing campaign platforms. The reason I've referred to MailChimp is because a lot of people use MailChimp because it's a user-friendly platform, but it's also free up to a certain point. And what I mean by up to a certain point is up to so many subscribers. So why MailChimp versus over just a standard email out? I guess you would use them for different things, Desley. So what you do with MailChimp is you're trying to build a database of people to promote to. So, you know, sometimes you'll go to a website and it will say, you know, subscribe to our newsletter. That's putting you in their database in a program like MailChimp. So they will automatically get put into that database in MailChimp, and you're building this database in the background. And then when you want to do some promotion, you can send an email directly from MailChimp to that database. So it's really, I guess, about building that database, and it's all there within MailChimp. It also looks a bit nicer than just sending an email, you know, so you can create a nice newsletter with images in it, and it just looks a bit fresher. In saying that, if you have a small group of people that you want to target, let's just say you've got a list of top 10 companies, you know, and you want to try to target them to purchase tickets to come to your event, you know, you might have tables of 10 or something. I would say in that instance, personalized emails would work better than MailChimp, because I guess the downfall of MailChimp, it isn't actually as personal. We all know when something's coming from MailChimp versus just an email. So you kind of, I guess, you go, okay, this is promotion. You can clearly see that it's promotion. Whereas an email personally from yourself to an organisation or to a small group is going to probably have more chance of being read and being credible to an extent. So I would treat them slightly different, but continue to use both of them.
I had a funny feeling that you had to use something like MailChimp if you had more than a certain number of email addresses to send to. Is that right? Or can you do an email out to an unlimited number of addresses? You
can't just send it to hundreds of emails. So there is a limit. Whereas MailChimp it can send to thousands, but like I said before, there's a cutoff before you have to start paying.
Yes, I understand. Yes, I was thinking, I thought you had to automatically go to something like MailChimp if you maybe had, I'm not thinking in hundreds or thousands, but 50, say.
Yeah, well, it may depend on your email provider. I know over the years I've had different situations where sometimes it'll let me send to, 30 or 50. Sometimes it won't let me even send to 20.
Yes.
So I think it
depends
just
on your provider and situation.
Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you. That's clarified it. Thank you very much.
That's okay. Any other questions about any of those marketing channels, that coordinated approach? Is everything making sense? I'm not overwhelming you too much. All right, let's keep going then, because we only have about 20 minutes. What I want to finish on, I could talk for 5 hours about digital marketing. It's a whole other topic on its own. And I kind of ummed and ahed about how much I would include in this session. So what I have done is I've just picked, I've just picked a few key messages to share with you from a digital marketing perspective. So when we talk about, you know, advertising, promotion, marketing, one element that has just grown so rapidly in the last 5 or so years is digital marketing. It's overwhelming, you know, even to someone like me that spends a lot of time online, it's really hard to keep up to speed with what's happening in the digital world. So it can be overwhelming. And like I said before, if you're ever in a position to apply for some funding to do some digital marketing for your event, I would highly recommend that you do it. Your event website. I don't even know if you guys have an event website. I'm going to take a guess and go maybe 1 or 2 of you do. And that's based on other experience in other regions. But what I encourage you to do is consider getting a website. And they don't have to be massive, big websites that are super expensive these days. The beauty of digital technology growing so rapidly is that it's become more affordable as well. So your event website is your hub of your marketing activity. So these days, you know, we as consumers expect to be able to find anything we want at any time online. So if we're looking for an event to attend in Balonne Shire and we're coming there, let's say we're coming there for a holiday or we're a new resident and we're looking at what events are coming up, first thing most people will do these days is go online and search. So if you do not have a website, I highly recommend you put that into your plan for the next couple of years and start to look at getting a website set up. If you do have a website, you need to make sure it's always up to date. Because what it does is everything, all of your activity will lead to that website. So if your website's got all the most up-to-date information about your program, any guest speakers, you know, packages that you've got on offer, information about the region, that is going to convert them on the spot. If somebody hears about your event and then goes to look for it and the information's outdated, or you don't have a website at all, most of the time you would have lost them. So what I want you to think about is building a website and making sure that that website is up to date and fresh all the time. It's the hub. I want you to think of it as a hub of your marketing activity. So your social media, your direct mail, your traditional, everything feeds people to your website. That's also usually the conversion point. So you'll have a book now on your website. What makes an event website great? It needs to be mobile friendly. So there's up to 80% of web traffic coming from mobile in some categories these days. So a lot of people are accessing things on this. So you need to make sure that if you do have a website, it's mobile friendly. You also need to focus on the visitor journey. So do your research and look at other websites. And so if you're embarking on building a website for the first time or working with a web designer to do your website, you need to start doing some research. So look at other websites and work out what design you like. What functionality do you like? What are the features of other websites that you like? And just start making a list. When we talk about user journey, so if I'm coming to your website, you want to make sure that I'm not overloaded with information. You want to make sure that it's got a lot of user generated content on it. So we want to see things from other people, not just typical sales content. I want to have ideas. I want you to give me ideas of what to do in the region, what to do at your event. And I want it to be easy and simple to navigate around. So you need to look at other websites. You need to start mocking up a bit of a map of your site. So people that actually plan out their site will end up with a much more effective site. Keeping it simple is really important, and also create a marketing funnel. So this is where you want to think about, okay, what do we need people to do? We want them to buy tickets, or we want them to subscribe to our newsletter in MailChimp. We want them to book accommodation packages. You need to know what that ultimate goal is. So when people come to your website, it's designed in a way that actually takes them on that journey. It's a bit sneaky how that all works, but that's what a marketing funnel is. You've got to link in external tools. And this is all stuff that a web developer will actually go through with you. So don't panic, if I'm talking a little bit too technical for you, but you want to make sure to get the most out of your website, you also have external tools integrated into it. So that's Google Search, Google Analytics, MailChimp, as we talked, or another email newsletter provider, a ticket booking platform like TryBooking or Eventbrite, or you may have your own. So really starting to link in those external tools. And you want to actually make sure you're also putting links on your site. So Google loves videos, it loves Google map listings, it loves links to like government websites. So need to understand what's going to get you that good organic traffic. And make sure it's easy for visitors to communicate with you. So, have a chat box, have a form that they can quickly fill something in and ask a question, easy access, contact details, really making sure it's really easy for the user to take action. We don't want to lose them. Now, in terms of what content management systems can I use? So if you are looking at getting a website for your event, or perhaps in the next couple of years, it's something that's on your list, there's lots of different content management systems. The most popular systems used these days are WordPress. It's like totally got the market share. Others that are quite popular are things like Joomla. You may have heard of things like Shopify or Squarespace. And things like WordPress are a little bit harder to manage and update on your own. So you want to find a system that's easy for you to make updates to, because it gets really costly if you have to continually pay someone to make small text updates on your site. So Squarespace is becoming really popular because of its ease of use, and it's also got really nice design. Now, common mistakes that events often make on their website. So the date and location is not clearly listed. That should be absolutely front and center when people open your site. It's hard to find where to purchase tickets or where to take action to purchase tickets. The site branding and style doesn't match the target audience. So once again, we need to think of our ideal attendee when we're creating our website, and we need to make sure the look and the feel and the language and the tone of voice is all important and related to or relatable to our audience. You want to make sure the URL is the same as your event name. So often an event will have a URL that's just completely different to their event name, which is really confusing for the user and will make it really hard for them, for your website to be found. So if your event name is Linda Rocks, then make your website www.lindarocks.com.au. Obviously, it's pending availability, but that is the ideal situation. Another common mistake is that events don't use high quality images. You can't afford to use pixelated or really poor quality images on your website, because people will just move on. They won't think it's a legitimate website. So invest in that photo and video content that I talked about, and make sure you've got some good quality images for your website. And there's broken links and errors on pages. Like, there's no excuse for that these days. So make sure, once again, that everything's working well on your website, up to date, fresh, and visually appealing. Okay, one final thing before you start using social media. There's a number of things you need to think about. I know for events that social media is probably one of the most used promotional tools. But before you can actually get maximum benefit from social media, you need to have a few things in place. First of all, you need to understand why you're using social media. Is your audience on there? Who are they? What channels are they on? Remember the phases we just talked about, so that coordinated phased approach? You need to understand what your messages will be and when you'll distribute them on your social media channels. So that's about being strategic and focused. Don't just have a scattergun approach, putting out a whole heap of messages and content at random times. So have that structure. Always check out what others are doing and work out how you can be different. It's not about copying what others are doing. So look at what stakeholders are doing. Look at what competitors are doing. Make sure you've got a point of difference. Your website, the hub that we talked about, it must be up to date and ready to convert. So there's no point investing in social media and then someone goes to your website and they find old information. If that happens, there's a good chance you've lost them forever. Set up an email marketing program and capture those email addresses. So that's the MailChimp that we were just talking about. That's one example of a email marketing program. Because once you have them, sounds like we're kind of trying to really con people in, but once people have subscribed to your database, you essentially own them from a marketing sense. So nobody can take that away from you other than that individual person can unsubscribe. But once people have made the choice to subscribe to your email marketing program, you then have the ability to communicate with them when you wish, and you can do that directly. So that's really, it's a real marketing asset, which is why a lot of events and businesses are always looking to capture email addresses. I encourage you to set up a blog on your website. So publish your own content, and you don't have to be, you know, a super duper writer. You can do photo blogs, you know, the top 5 pet photos from our last event, for example. But what it means is when you're capturing content, it gives you, when you're writing content, it gives you stuff to share on your social media. So you want to be able to drive those leads back to your website. And finally, a very key point with social media is to determine who will coordinate your social media. If you don't have the skills on your team and you've got some budget, then I suggest this is where you invest it. Or maybe if you've got somebody that's developing a website for you, maybe that's something they can actually assist with. Or see if you can find, you know, a younger person in your community that loves digital marketing that might be able to assist with it. So you all have limited resources, so it's really important for you to focus on the social media channels where your ideal attendees are playing. And remember, I said before, there's been a bit of a, I guess, a transition around social channels where Facebook has now become more for the parents or the grandparents. And the younger ones have moved off and have moved more towards Instagram or TikTok. So depending on who your audience is will determine what social media channels you use. If you're unsure, best chance is to work with Facebook and Instagram. There's also things like Snapchat, which some of the younger ones are, I shouldn't say some, a lot of the younger ones are on as well. Now, my final slide. With all of that said, all of that marketing information, the most important message for you to remember: if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So if you want to get bigger return or better return for your investment, It's so important that you put in place those KPIs and you're able to measure it. You need to be able to review your activity, measure it, analyze it, improve it every year. And you can measure your results through your website or Facebook insights. You'll know via ticket sales how successful you've been. You can look at when ticket sales occur or postcodes, etc., to get a sense of where people have come from. Just remember that you need this measurement to align back to those KPIs and objectives that we talked about. So if you're working on building civic pride, you need to implement measurement tools to be able to measure civic pride. So it's really important that you put in place measurement tools. Now that's everything I have to share with you in our masterclass today, our marketing masterclass. It's a lot of information. I've given you 2 good resources. So you do have a checklist that will help you work through that process of identifying your ideal event attendees. And then you've also got a marketing schedule template that will also help you start to consider how to have a more structured approach to your marketing activity for your event. So I hope you've gained a lot from that. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to stay on the line for another 5 minutes or so and answer any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to catching you next week. Thanks, Desley.
Thanks very much, Linda. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Thank you. That was excellent today, and I particularly liked about the targeted marketing approach. And also the digital and social way of advertising, and not to use a scattergun. So that's taught me a lot. I was wondering, you did say that for any of the sessions we could get one of our committee members interested in that particular aspect to come on board. Next week, I was wondering, is sponsorship next week?
Good question. Let me have a quick look. Yes, next week is event sponsorship and grants.
Yes, event sponsorship and grants. Well, just wondering, the lady on our little committee that is looking at doing sponsorship and grants, would she need to register, or do you envisage that they would just sit in with one of us, or can she register in her own right and do it from her place? Or
either option would be absolutely fine, Desley, whatever is convenient for her. If she wants to just register and then participate from her home, then that's totally fine. This is open to all events and committee members in Balonne Shire, so that's absolutely fine. She would just need to touch base with Kim at council and let her know, and she'll make sure that she's got the information ready to be able to participate next week.
Thanks. Well, thanks for that, Linda. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Talk to you next week.
Yes, so as you've all just heard, next week we are talking sponsorship and grant funding. So bring all your questions along. If there's anything that comes up in the meantime, we've got that Facebook event, so you can jump in there and ask any questions or raise any points that you may want me to cover off in next week's session. I'll see you all same time next week. Thank you.
So Linda, sorry mate, just before you go.
That's okay.
So next week's, I'll have to duck out.